September 23rd, 2020 meeting of Haliburton County Council is now in session. Warden Liz Danielson presiding.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I don't have any comments now. I think we've got a fairly lengthy agenda, so we'll get right to it. So, Mr. Rutter, if you could give us a roll call, please.
Councillor Moffat.
Present.
Warden Danielson.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Here.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Ryle.
Present.
Councillor DeVolen.
Present.
And Councillor Schell.
Present.
Okay, if I could have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please. Councillor Moffat and Councillor Kennedy. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the September 23rd, 2020 Haliburton County Council agenda be approved.
All in favor? Carried. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Hearing none, if I could have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of August the 26th. Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that the minutes from the August 26th, 2020 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? Carried. The next item is business arising from the previous meeting, and that's some clarification on the shoreline preservation bylaw process. Mike has got a report, but I'd just like to say how disappointed I was to see that particular letter. You know, we've done a lot of work, a lot of background work. Staff has worked hard on this. The science has been done, and you know, I just look to the public to respect our process and understand that we're trying to do the best for our environment and everyone involved in this process. But I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Warden. I think the report is self-explanatory. This isn't something I normally do, but I really felt since a number of the facts were not correct in the letter and it was fairly widely distributed, I thought it was important to clarify those facts. I think it's also important that people understand and are able to trust the process no matter which side of the debate they fall on. So I did think it was important people understood that we clarified the process and how it was intended to unfold.
Any questions or comments on that? Councillor DeVolen.
Just thank you for bringing this forward, Mike, to clarify the facts. We live in Trumpian times, and it's time, sometimes it's appropriate to correct the record. And I thank you very much for your report.
Thanks, Brent. Okay, the next item on the agenda is, oh, I'm sorry, we have a resolution. Could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Moffat. Thank you.
By Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the September 23rd, 2020 Shoreline Preservation Bylaw Process Clarification of Facts Staff Report as information.
All in favor? Carried. The next item is a letter of engagement from Kuro Partners with relation to the ICON program. So I think we will hear from both Mr. Rutter and Mr. Is it Black, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yes.
Donovan.
So thank you, Warden. The ICON 1 intake really showed us that there was a lot more work to do, that we needed to be a lot more proactive in future intakes and programs. And we do know that there will be many more funding programs or streams for broadband coming up. I guess we had a very interesting meeting with Bell early on in the process, and they had initially proposed a very different project than the one that you saw. And we had encouraged them to do a bigger and something that had more impact across the county, which ultimately they did. But their question to us was so, okay, we wouldn't be opposed to that. So where should we go? And we really had no data to drive that. We had some stories to tell about, gaps that had been identified to us, but we really had no data to drive the decision-making to say, here's where you should go next. So clearly we need more technical support in order to evaluate that data, to collect it and to evaluate it. We had a very positive experience with Curo Partners and Jonathan the last time. And so we are asking that the engagement be formalized, and that I'll let Jonathan speak to his work plan or the proposed work plan, but I'll speak to the financial aspects of it. If we spend the maximum, and Jonathan has provided a range, and I would say that he did that for intake 1 as well and came in very near the bottom of the range. So we know that he's prepared to do that. Lots of consultants don't. But if we spend to the absolute top end of the range, it's about $32,500 for consulting fees, $3,000 a year for 3 to 4 years for data analysis. And then if we need some other tools to help us evaluate that data or analyze the data, then we would come back and ask for that. So it's well within the $100,000 that remains in our broadband reserve. And we have, from our sustainability program, we would be adding $140,000 to that next year should council approve the draft budget. So I'll turn it over to Jonathan to speak to his proposed work plan, and we can take questions after.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think, Mike, we were probably pleasantly surprised at how much coverage might be coming from the ICON applicants that we met in the first intake. And as you said, we were also pleasantly surprised, I would say, with the amount of work they were willing to put in should they get funding from the government. So what that did leave us with is a desire really to move ahead on the following basis. One is to what we're calling map the gap. So I'm sure all of you have received emails or phone calls, or someone, stopped you in the grocery store and said, I need better internet. Probably few have done the other and said, I have better internet, I don't need anything more. But what we've done is there is a tool out there from CIRA, C-I-R-A, and it has been endorsed by Industry Canada, by ISED. And it will allow us, if we sign up for the service, to collect and analyze data as residents of the county initiate speed tests, if you will, internet quality tests from their home computers, from their phones, using the infrastructure that they have in their home or their cottage. That data will be collected, and then we'll be able to analyze it, and really then we'll be able to direct what we hope are a number of applicants in the second intake of the ICON program towards areas that we know need internet the most and areas that aren't likely to be covered. So that will be sort of the analysis phase of it. Our plan is that through the month of October, we would get the website up for the data collection and begin asking residents to run these speed tests off the website. Month of November, we would analyze the data and begin approaching ISPs to see which ones might want to work with us on a second intake funding application, again, for those areas that need it the most. Through December, we would be evaluating proposals with them and preparing for the intake 2. Now, the ICON program, as it was laid out in their guidelines, I'm just going to pull it up for myself. They had some rough timelines. They didn't give specific dates. So the second intake, they've said early winter of 2021 as a deadline for the first stage of intake 2, and late winter for those applicants finding out if they move on to stage 2, where a very detailed analysis needs to take place. So early winter, late winter, I'm not exactly sure what the calendar is, but I think if we're analyzing or collecting in October, analyzing and working with ISPs in November, we should be ready for that intake 1 of the second stage, intake to first stage. The next part, if any of the applicants we work with move into stage 2, there's very detailed, that's where the very detailed planning comes into place, engineering drawings and designs and very detailed costing, and we would work with them on that. Now, the reason for the big sort of range in the funding for Kuro Partners, for myself, is we don't know what kind of capabilities the ISP or ISPs we end up working with will have in-house. We may need to provide a lot of support to them, or they may have it quite well in hand, and we're guiding them and providing some input along the way. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but happy to answer any now.
Any questions from council? Councillor Royale, then Councillor Kennedy.
Just a question with regards to the survey for capturing the capacity and capability. Is it also going to identify the source of the current delivery, whether it be satellite, hardline, or is it just going to be the capacity itself?
It only identifies the capacity. It doesn't identify the, sorry, it does identify the provider. So if they're XploreNet, we'll know that it might be satellite, or it could be their fixed wireless network. But no, it identifies the ISP, but not the technology. It's a good question, though.
Because it would be quite different from the speed from one to the other, depending on the.
But what it will tell us. Sorry, what was that?
I'm just wondering if we really get good data that way. Without the
well,
source.
What it will tell us is it will tell us, you know, in that particular area, the market or that end user has selected that as their best option, whether that's a combination of price and availability or what was most convenient for them. But yes, I have asked CIRA if that data is available, and they haven't been able to provide that or code that into their system yet.
Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, a couple things. I did that link last night, and my download speeds were in the 2 range.
Okay.
0.3. I just did it this morning before the meeting, and my download is now 5.05 because there's not many users, I guess.
Right.
And my download is still consistent at 0.34. So would you encourage people to go on multiple times and multiple time of day in order to enhance the data that we're getting? And second to that, you say we don't have enough data, but I thought we had does the cell gap analysis, is that going to be a contributing data to the overall next steps? We did a cell gap analysis here in the county, which we paid $40,000 plus for. So I'm hoping that is still useful data as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I'll turn that over to you. How are we able to use that cell gap data?
I guess I would say that it's absolutely available to us. And in fact, Bjorn will be coming and doing a presentation of that in the next short while. We're trying to arrange our schedules with yours. But I would say that the information we would be gathering would be much more granular. So we would have much more, it would identify much more specifically where gaps are. The EORN data will be very useful, and we will be able to utilize it, but it would be a much higher level than this would be providing.
The other thing I can say is that although broadband internet and cell coverage does typically go hand in hand, none of us are interested in running our Zoom calls off of our cell phone data plans. And we are trying to reach out in the broadband sort of fixed broadband gap to see where that is. So it will be complementary, and it will be more granular. Yeah.
Any other questions for either Mike or Jonathan? Andrea, then Pat.
Well, just to follow up, and I'm not sure if you answered that part about Councillor Kennedy's different speeds. Of course, I did. I had 26.22 down and 10.16 up. So I live in town, haha. Plus it was at night. Should people be doing it multiple times and submitting that? Okay, good. And how can we get this message out? Councillor Kennedy mentioned it at our Dysart Council meeting yesterday. That's going to be such a key to make sure like everybody who has internet needs to be doing this and
Right.
get that information.
So we've, Mike and I have talked about a couple of different ways. Certainly there will be a branded County of Haliburton landing page that we can direct people to off of, possibly off the county website. Mike, you had talked about contacting some of the lake associations in an email or a letter mail. It'll be a sort of a multifaceted approach to get people to head to the website and run the test. And yes, running them a couple times a day at different times is an excellent idea. This is an internet quality test. It's slightly different than an internet speed test because this will pick up differences in time of day, much more so than some of the other speed tests that happen. So that's a good thing, but it will show more variation than some of the other tests on the market.
Councillor Kennedy, you had another question?
Yeah, it was just on the when you're mentioning that we're providing support for proposals by a multitude of providers, and that we may end up with more than one provider moving forward here in the area. Is there any talk of sitting down with both or multiple providers and trying to limit the duplication of services? I see that, like, for example, North Frontenac did some expansion in Haliburton, and then promptly 6 months later, Bell came along and basically duplicated the service, whereas 3 miles out of town, nobody has anything, and yet you got double whammy in town. And I'm just wondering, is there a coordinated approach, or is that a possibility that one provider tackles Conesus Lake, for example, another provider tackles Haliburton Lake? I'm just using those as
Yeah, no, certainly. As we move forward, we'll be trying to maximize the amount of coverage and not just the number of applications that are out there. So we will be working to try and not have duplication of effort. That's not what anyone wants. As far as, North Frontenac and Bell, I could talk to that situation, but one of the things we'll be encouraging is that the ISPs update the data set that ISED is using in awarding their grants, in hopes that ISED at least isn't overfunding, or ISED and the CRTC aren't funding an overbuild, and that money can go to where it's most needed. We can't control what Bell or North Frontenac decide to do in the open market. We wish we could, but there's a reason why some places are double covered and some places are not covered at all. It's simple market economics. And hopefully, with some sort of direction and guidance and encouragement, we can get some of those under-covered areas fixed up in the next while. What I'm secretly hoping is some of these projects that have come in the first intake are huge. They're going to take years to deliver, 2-3 years to deliver. I'm actually wondering if we might get some smaller ISP that can move quicker and actually deliver internet in an underserved area a little bit faster than the tail end of some of the big implementations that may happen. That would be, in my mind, a bit of a win, and a fun win to have, of course.
Mr. Rutter, go ahead.
If I could, one of the things that the ministry and through Minister Scott have committed to us is that they would let us know the areas that are going to be receiving coverage based on ICON Intake 1. And so this will help us fill gaps that aren't filled as part of that intake, so that we aren't overbuilding or trying to cover an area that will be covered as part of another project. So I think the minister was very quick to respond to that. She was great, and I think that will be really useful to make sure that we are planning to spend our money or even the ISP's money in the most effective way possible.
Mike, if I can just add on to that, that's as you speak with provincial and federal counterparts, that's a significant issue. When an award announcement comes out, whether that's for funding from CRTC or ISED or the province or whatever group, that Haliburton is, Bell Canada or ExploreNet or Rogers or TELUS were awarded an internet build in Haliburton to cover these communities. The local ISPs or other ISPs sit on the sidelines until they know exactly where that coverage is going. So the capital that they might have deployed in some of the other areas sits and waits or gets deployed elsewhere, because who wants to build where a funded build is going to happen? And if the details aren't known, the ISPs just sit out and wait. So it's an unfortunate byproduct, but as a, if I was a businessman in that market, I wouldn't go build until I knew exactly where that award was going. So it's actually the details of what, if possible, right down to the street level, or the very fine line of where is that funded coverage going to go, so that others can fill in gaps if they are interested in it. But yeah, appreciate that, Mike.
Councillor Ryall.
It's just a question, just a follow up to that. Once the major players have been identified and areas have been indicated as to where they're going to go from the major players, do you have a feel that once the smaller players start to get involved, what that does to the coverage capacity in terms of percentage? I mean, if a big player comes in, and let's assume for the sake of argument that we use 100% from them, and now the smaller players know where everything is, would that increase from the smaller players by 10%, 20%, or do you have a feel for that?
No, I don't really have a feel for that. And the smaller players have constrained capital, so they're going to target areas that are easiest to reach, or next easiest to reach. So we're hoping to have to maximize that, but I don't have a sense of the percentage.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks very much, Jonathan. I really appreciate your information. We look forward to some exciting, hopefully exciting times ahead.
That'd be really great. Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and approve the letter of engagement? Councillor Moffat and Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the September 23rd, 2020 staff report, letter of engagement, Curl Partners ICON program, and that the terms of the agreement and work plan be approved.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, under delegations, we have 2 videos supporting Minden Pride in Haliburton. And addressing business associated with Pride. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the videos. They're just great. And I would urge any members of the public to check it out. They're on our agenda and on our website. And they are a wonderful example of the level of inclusiveness that's right here in Haliburton. I'm really pleased to see. Are there any comments that anyone wants to make or questions with respect to that? Councillor Roberts?
So we had congratulated Minden, Councillor Kennedy and I, and said, what a fabulous job, and especially in this year, how difficult it was to go forward with any kind of event. So kudos to you. But how can we, I don't want to change the name, but how can we spill it over to make this more of a county type thing, and if it's possible, if we could be in touch with the people or the organizers. I'm not sure, is it a council thing? I'll let Councillor DeVolen have something to say on that.
Well, I might have something to say about that myself. I too offered my congratulations, and I see that the one of the first steps in achieving what you're asking is that they've changed their name now to Minden Pride in the Haliburton Highlands, which is more inclusiveness. That's, if you check their website out, that's what you'll see there. Councillor DeVolen?
No, you just rightly, the organizers for the last few years have been cognizant of the growth and the expansion beyond Minden Hills. And before we even started talking this year about it, they understood the interest to grow it across the county, and the rebranding and the renaming is part of it. And who knows with the organization, whether it stays like this or the change in naming may happen again. But they're very aware of it, and this is why they've done this. And I speak on behalf of myself and Minden Hills, whatever label or title or whatever you want to call it, that if it makes more people buy into it across the region, I would be supportive with the name as it is, or if there's a future evolution. And just kudos to that group. They continue to grow and get community support across the county. So that's you know, like I said, I knew the name change was coming for quite a while, and it's good to see. And I'm really encouraged to see that the rest of you are embracing this in the same way that we have in Minden.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could we have a resolution accepting the videos? Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Roberts, Councillor Schell, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Schell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the videos in support of Minden Pride and the Haliburton Highlands.
All in favor? Thank you. The next item is approval of reports and recommendations from the Committee of the Whole meeting. Do you wish to speak to that at all, Mike, or we just have a resolution?
Unless there are questions, Warden, I'm fine with just the resolution.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then, please? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Kennedy. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the recommendations from the September 9th, 2020 meeting of the Haliburton County Council Committee of the Whole be adopted by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, next is planning and environment. And first up, I think we have Corey to talk to us about climate change and the mitigation plan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Corey.
So I'm here to seek approval for the Haliburton County Corporate Climate Change Mitigation Plan. As many of you know, over the past few months, I've attended Haliburton County Committee of the Whole, as well as each of the local councils seeking endorsement and approval of the plan. So each local council had the opportunity to provide any comments, which are included in my report, and we will be considering during implementation. And ultimately, each council passed a resolution supporting the approval of the plan. So seeking approval from the county in order to complete milestone 3 of the Partners for Climate Protection program, and ultimately to have a plan in place. So once the plan is approved, we'll be moving into the implementation stage. Part of this, we imagine, involves the support of a working group, which Charles E. will speak to in the next report, in order to scope out each of the actions in the plan in greater detail before they are brought forward to each council, as well as to support with the beginning stages of our corporate climate change adaptation plan, which is phase 2 of the climate change planning process. So council will be kept updated on the progress of this plan, not only through each action coming forward to councils before implementation, but also annual reports on our corporate greenhouse gas inventory to see how we're progressing from the baseline, as well as a summary each year of the initiatives that we have completed. So I'm happy to answer any questions, should there be any.
Any questions for Corey? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the report? Councillor Schell. Seconder, Councillor DeVolen, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council approve the County of Haliburton Corporate Climate Change Mitigation Plan.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, next is a report from Charles E. on implementation and monitoring of the climate change plan.
Great, thank you very much and good morning. This report has 3 separate items, which I will address in order. The first being the working group that Corey just spoke to. The working group is seen to contain staff representatives from each of the local municipalities, as well as the county. The staff would include those who are responsible for specific programs or specific areas within the municipality. So waste or fleet or buildings. And the working group would bring forward any recommendations on implementation. So those items included in your specific chapters of the plan forward to their respective council. They would be supported by Corey in the development of those recommendations. And the working group would also be seen as is also an opportunity for collaboration across the 5 municipalities. So if there was a program moving forward, maybe there's a way that all 5 could do it together. Maybe there would be some benefit with regards to costs or RFP process. So we see that as a benefit to all municipalities in implementing their climate change program. And the working group being staff reporting to the local municipal council or your committees is envisioned because it relates only to the business of the corporation. So it would be the staff who are responsible, who have the greatest understanding, who maybe manage your budgets respective to those areas, like I mentioned, say waste as an example. So that is item number 1 on the report. Are there any questions?
I see that there were some comments about membership on the working group. I wonder if any members of council have any comments or concerns about that. Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Kennedy.
And I have tremendously unstable internet this morning. So pardon me if I vanish or get all fuzzy. And Charles, you may answer if I can for you, Madam Warden. This may be coming in the second part of your explanation, but I was looking for a little more detail on how the working group, if the working group should just be staff, and I fully understand the reasons why, but in connection to that, it says in the report that that staff will participate in the joint meetings of the committees at the lower tiers, and you know there's a lot of really strong personalities on some of our committees. And we know from the joint meetings they've had so far that they're not necessarily at the same level on different projects. And there are some divergent views, as there always are in issues like this. So I'm looking for a little more explanation about how the working group is the working group going to go to where there are environment committee meetings. We need to make sure they're not being given direction, because as you say, this is the business of the corporation. So I'm looking for a little explanation of how those would mesh together so we don't end up in a big bun fight over all of this.
I understand the concern there. So the vision is that you would have those 5 staff people from each local municipality. And let's say we worked on project A, and it was decided that there was planning and processing required to accomplish that. There would be budgetary implications as well as staff time requirements. So for that person, the staff person from, I'll use Algonquin Highlands as an example, if your committee structure is up and running again, it would be at the guidance of your staff person or your CAO as to whether that's an item that needs to be vetted through the committee, or if it would go directly to your council, because some items will be required to go to council. And so that's what I was going to get into the second item, because I think each local municipality has different committees. So some have an environment committee, some have a climate change committee, some have only committee of the whole. And so each municipality has a different process for hearing these sorts of proposals as they come forward. And it would be at the direction of the local municipal council, or in my case, the direction of county council, how that is brought forward. So you're right, there's a different process depending on where the item would sit, Algonquin Highlands versus, say, the County of Haliburton, because there's a different committee structure. But no, I'm not envisioning all members of the working group coming to Algonquin Highlands. It would be your staff person with the support of Corey to bring any proposal forward. Does that answer the question?
I'm sure we're not finished this discussion, so we'll move on. Councillor Kennedy, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
My apologies. I'm uncomfortable with just having staff only. We've gone to a committee of the whole structure. And as you say in Algonquin Highlands in your example, who decides what project A is? Does that come from local council or from county council, and then the staff run with it? I would like to see some kind of council representation on the working group, whether it be one from each of the lower tiers. But just the way our structure has changed recently, and we do have some very passionate people both on council and on our previous environmental committee that I think that we're the ones who answer to the public, that we need to have some input as it goes along.
So if I may, through you, Warden, the project, or Project A as the example, is all outlined and only comes from your chapter of the climate change plan. So if you look at the different subsections, so if you looked under fleet, and one of the objectives was a green fleet policy, that has been approved by your municipal council, and it may be different from something that Algonquin Highlands does versus something that Dysart does, but it wouldn't be something not already approved by your council.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, carry on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Moffat.
With apologies, I think I'm asking the same question that's been asked twice and answered twice. So it's going to be up to each municipality. So let's just use us, Algonquin Highlands. Will decide what, if any, role its own environment committee would have. It's ours as an environment and stewardship committee, whose mandate is primarily education for the greater good. So each municipality would decide the feed-in process as we go through each of our own sections. Okay,
that is correct. And maybe I'll move into item number 2 because it may shed a little more light. So the climate change staff, myself and Corey, we have had some requests to speak directly to your local municipal environment or climate change committees. And so we would be seeking that direction from your municipal council as to what that participation looks like. We would need to know, are we being asked to come and just provide an overview of your particular section of the plan, or some greater involvement? And again, as you say, Councillor Moffat, that would be at the direction of the council. So it would be I would recommend that, yes, the climate change coordinator attend any of those local committees when directed to do so by council, and identify what specific, what the purpose is for attending those meetings. Could be obviously supported by your staff who are participants in the working group. And then item number 3 carries, I guess, a little further on the committee attendance requests. Staff have been requested to attend what I'm calling the joint environmental committee meetings. That was some group gatherings of the membership of local environment and climate change committees. However, at this point, I'm looking to County Council for direction, because staff are not entirely clear of the mandate of what that joint group is and what the reporting structure is. So who directs that group committee, and where do any approvals come from, if any are requested at those meetings? So at this time, I would recommend that we wait and it be reconsidered by County Council at a future date once that's understood, because also the county uses a committee of the whole structure as the municipality of Dysart et al. So if it was a joint committee meeting, we don't have those environment or climate change committees at our 2 municipalities that would be able to participate. So it becomes very confusing until some sort of structure is identified, which brings back to item 2. It may be best for staff to attend as directed by your local councils to the committees that are appropriate for you. So in Dysart, that could be Committee of the Whole, and in Algonquin Highlands, that would be your Environment and Stewardship Committee.
If I might just comment on the joint environmental committee meetings, actually, you know, although not everyone was on the same page, I really did think that it was a great opportunity for the 4 municipalities and the county to get together and talk about joint projects, or doing things at the same time, scheduling things together. It was, I think, quite enlightening for a lot of people to hear some of the ideas and thoughts that people from other municipalities had. And I don't know that I see an issue with there being a committee of the whole structure. There's nothing stopping Dysart at all from appointing someone from their council to participate in that kind of process, should that go forward. But it is an opportunity to just kind of everybody get their heads together. And there was a mix of both councillors, members of the public, and staff. Councillor De Vollen.
Yeah, and it's, as already said by Charles E. and others, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So in Minden Hills, every committee of council has a minimum of one member of council as a liaison and staff. So we already have that structure, and whether they liaise with other groups or not, you know, that's their purview, and things that have significant or financial or other implications flow back from that committee of council initially to our committee of the whole. And I think it'll, with what Charles E. explains, that will functionally work with the structure we have, but realizing that's quite different than others.
Councillor Kennedy, did you have a comment? Councillor Roberts.
Thanks. So Dysart has changed to the committee of the whole structure, and we did have sort of some concerns before with the joint committee as to what authority or who was keeping minutes or who was taking notes. I know it was a good intentions and probably some good discussion came from those things, but it was also prior to the county taking the lead and making a bold decision to put climate change right up to the top of the list of priorities, hire a climate change coordinator, create a climate change plan, which we now have. So I feel it's not like we've delegated authority. Now we have a partner, we have someone with the expertise. And so I don't know the relevance of this working group now that the county has sort of taken the lead on this. So we have an excellent staff member who's our environmental manager, who would be the staff appointee on the staff working group that we've talked about. And committee of the whole and council will make its priorities of how Dysart wants to go forward with its chapter of the plan. I know there was a bit of confusion, Corey, when you came to Dysart Council and presented, and it wasn't a unanimous vote. But I think I was trying to explain that's where now Dysart, once we adopt the plan, now Dysart can start making the actions and the things that we want to do. So I'm not sure the relevance of the working group personally. I mean, the previous one, that joint group, when we now are going in this direction.
Councillor Moffat.
Having heard that from Councillor Roberts, I think that's food for thought. The important thing to me is, you know, whether people have, like Dysart has committee of the whole, and other municipalities like ours have a committee that has citizens on it. There's a lot of really interested, passionate, knowledgeable people in our community, and my fear is that, you know, everybody wants to have to participate in this greater plan so that we can all move forward. And so what I'm looking for in my mind is a streamlining of the process. Mayor De Vollen says that their process in Minden works well. I think we need to make sure that where there is council and corporate governance on certain matters and projects, that lives in the right place. And so how do we harness the enthusiasm of the public who have stepped up and have interest in some of our committees, and make sure it's assimilated with the corporate work that needs to be done. So everybody stay in their lanes, but, you know, move forward at the same time. I'm just concerned that there's going to be too much push me, pull you from different areas and different people who, again, themselves have different levels of knowledge and different levels of passion and enthusiasm to see things move forward that maybe the municipalities themselves wouldn't be able to manage at any given time. So I'm looking for an assimilation or a consolidation of passions with the projects. And too many committees, to me, sounds like possibly too many fingers in the pie.
Go ahead, Charlesie.
And actually, I think there's a great opportunity for those members of our communities who are passionate, and that will come with the development of the community plan. We're going to require the ideas and exactly that, the dedication that they've shown in your local committees where there are public members for the participation in the creation of the public plan, as well as getting the messaging out in the community. that would be where public members will be requested to, say, do you have the time to dedicate to this process? What we're talking about today in this report from the plan that was approved in the previous, actually earlier today, is only the corporate. And so that's why I'm bringing it to County Council to say, is that where you want the public, or is it in the community plan as I think it's most appropriate in developing that community piece, which is phase 3.
Councillor Moffat.
I absolutely believe that the role for the public is in the community plan because members of the public are not necessarily well enough informed about corporate needs, responsibilities, and competing pressures to be able to make those decisions. And I think they have a tremendous role to play, probably the biggest role to play in the community plan. So I agree with what the planner's saying for sure.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, if that's it on that report, Charlesy, we'll go ahead with a resolution. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receive the staff report on climate change implementation and monitoring process for information, and that Haliburton County Council direct staff to establish a climate change joint municipal working group comprised of municipal staff for work related to phase 1, municipal mitigation, and phase 2, municipal adaptation. And that Haliburton County Council direct staff to draft a collaborative public participation program for the drafting of phase 3 community plan.
All in favor? That's carried. Did you have a question, Councillor Al? Okay. Well, we look forward to hearing information back from the working group. And then on to a planning department update for you, Charlesy.
Great, thank you very much. So there's a number of items here I will run through, and if there's any questions, I will stop after each one. The first item is the idea of a digital atlas. So right now, the county, we produce, it's a burgundy plastic binder, and it has all of the atlas pages in it, paper pages. And it has been suggested by some of the people who purchased this that wouldn't it be great if we had this digitally, where we could, rather than carrying around a big binder with us in our trucks, have it on like our tablet so we can flip through those pages. We're confident that we can create something like that. We'd have to look at what the best, format is to do that. However, I wanted to bring it forward to see if this is an idea you'd like us to investigate in 2021. So if there's any questions or comments.
Thoughts from council. Councillor DeVolen.
Absolutely.
Councillor Moffat.
What would be the update policy on it? Because things do change in mapping. And so would, if somebody did purchase and download it, they would get notified of an available update when there was a significant enough number of changes?
So currently we update the atlas at, it's a once a year update where once all the local municipalities pass their new road naming bylaws and that process is complete. So it is a once a year, and we do currently notify those people who have purchased. We do not charge them the full price for the update. Right now we just charge them on a page basis. So if there's 6 pages that need to be replaced, then we only charge them based on that. So we would have to come up with a pricing scheme with a similar price scale, I guess we could call it.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I was going to ask that about, so how do you charge for an electronic version, or have you contemplated how that works?
We will have to look at that. And I think it will be based not only on the time required for an update, but also what format we end up using. Because I'm not sure it's going to be a straightforward, just turn the map into a PDF type of thing. So that would be brought forward. Really, I see that there may be interest. So it's something we should investigate in 2021.
So I think you're hearing support for that.
Great, thank you very much. We will move forward and bring something back to council. The next item is just for information, Waste Reduction Week in Canada. It's coordinated by the Recycling Council of Ontario, and really it encourages the public in the elimination or reduction of waste. The municipality of Dysart et al., they've partnered with the county public library, and they're developing a public promotion and education plan to support Waste Reduction Week in Canada. And they approached the County of Haliburton to see if we would be interested in promoting and using our social media channels to share some of the developed materials. And so I thought that I would bring that forward to say I think that that would be a good idea. And I have communicated with the Director of Tourism that it's something we would be able to do. So it's coming up in October. So I was just looking for council support for us to support that program.
Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I'm just wondering, there's a number of us sitting on the screen here who are on the library board. Just wondering if Mayor Roberts can maybe discuss how Dysart partnered with the county's library system when we are all part of the library system. This is a great collaborative effort. It's a great idea, and I'm assuming then that whatever information education goes out to serve this need will be definitely indicative of all 4 municipalities as a group.
Councillor Roberts.
If I may, thanks. Well, actually, I knew that we were doing the Waste Reduction Week through Dysart, but we had so many things on our plate. I didn't pay attention to the fact that we were actually partnering with the library. So I don't know if Councillor Kennedy is able to remember that. We are doing a ton of promotion with our new staff member for all kinds of things, how to recycle properly. We've done a children's book that's available in electronically or actually in paper format as well, but which the children's book could be for adults as well, but it's a cute little interactive coloring book and stuff about that. So there's waste reduction, but also about proper recycling. So I'm afraid I'm not able to answer the question of how it ended up being a partnership with the library. So.
Councillor Kennedy, did you want to add to that?
No, I'm not.
Sorry, I was on this slide.
I'll pass on that. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
We're spending an awful lot of money to go through a service delivery review for finding ways to collaborate and find efficiencies in service. And I really do wish there was more attempts to reach out to neighboring municipalities to work as a group. We've heard loud and clear from the public that that's of interest. We've all agreed to spend money on a service delivery review to find those very things. And it would just be nice if when these projects are being considered that all of our staff could reach out to the neighbors to say, do you want to play with us? And just broaden the pool there a little bit. Thank you.
I think that's a message that we all have to take to our staff to make sure that if they are working on projects like that, that's at top of mind, that there is more collaboration. Any other comments about that portion of the report? Okay, carry on, Charles E.
Thank you. So the next 2 items are both related to our ongoing LiDAR project. The first is that the county has been made aware that Public Safety Canada is seeking to extend or create a new intake for the National Disaster Mitigation Program. As you may remember, the county was a successful applicant in a previous intake, which helped to fund part of the obtaining the LiDAR data. And so going forward, it appears there may be up to an additional $20 million. And my understanding is that projects that had been under a previous intake could apply for an extension. So our deadline was March 31st, 2020 to have those items completed. And so there may be either an opportunity to extend that deadline and ask for additional funding because they understand that these projects, they didn't end on March 31st. So what we're looking to do in the next year going forward could be added to that extension, or they may just create a whole new intake where those projects could reapply for additional funding under the new intake. I have had a meeting with Ganaraska Conservation Authority about what this would look like, as well as conversations with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, because they're the ministry who we make our application through. And if they support it, it's through them that it goes to the federal government. So I have begun the wheels moving on this, and I wanted to make you aware that it may be a quick turnaround on application for this. And I will bring any further information that I have, as well as any details to council moving forward. So I just wanted to bring you up to date. And the NDMP funding, as a reminder, was a 50% funding. So 50% from the federal government, and then a portion shared between the county. And the other funding that I've listed here is the ICIP funding, which we could also use to support our LiDAR project. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program has been announced that it's going to be adjusted to include eligible projects such as disaster mitigation, specifically to protect against floods and fires. So that fits, again, perfectly with our ongoing LiDAR program. And under this funding project, there is eligibility up to 80% funding for municipalities through this program. And the application process has not been opened yet, but again, working with our partners that we currently have, setting up the information so we know what we're going to need for the next 2 years, both in a process of what needs to be done, but also what is each of those items going to cost. And hopefully we would be successful in one or maybe both of these 2 funding opportunities, but I feel like we should be applying for both just in case.
Questions or comments on that, on the funding opportunities? I think you're seeing nodding heads.
I do. Alrighty.
Carry on.
And the remainder of the report, just a summary of, the Land Division Committee met in September, and they will meet again November 9th. And then a further summary of ongoing planning applications, as well as items that the GIS department is currently working on. And I'm happy to answer any questions there too.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about the report overall? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Schell, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Schell. Be it resolved that the September 23rd, 2020 staff report on planning department activities be received for information by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Well, on to a little more meatier topic, not that they aren't all meaty topics. We'll look at the draft shoreline preservation bylaw.
Sure. Thank you again. I will, I'm not going to read through the report. I'll just speak to a couple of items. This report really follows the conversation that was had at Committee of the Whole, as well as the direction that was provided through that meeting. Staff have created a follow-up list, or what I'm calling an action items list, to be brought back to council. So that includes all of those questions that that members of the Committee of the Whole proposed, saying, what happens if A and B, or how would we process these applications? So I had a number of items. I think there's over 30 included in that list. And due to requiring consultation and communication with agencies like MNRF, as an example, or the conservation authorities, it may take me a few more weeks to have those responses and bring them back. But I wanted you to know that I am moving forward to answer those. And then based on that, we can incorporate maybe some new processes into the shoreline draft bylaw. And the draft bylaw that I've presented attached to this report, really, it outlines the high-level rules proposed to regulate our shoreline areas. Staff were directed to also develop an implementation process. So while we have the rules set here, what does that look like to the average resident or to the local municipality to make sure that these items are being followed. And at Committee of the Whole, we spoke about the ways in which we should make this as a one-stop shop, a comprehensive communication between both the county and the local municipalities, whether that's your building department or our bylaw enforcement. And so again, this will be developed moving forward. The draft proposed bylaw is really the basis. So from this, we will build those processes. Both the development of a public consultation and implementation plan will take a few weeks to complete, but I will be bringing that back to council as well. And this bylaw, again, is the first step, and I'm hoping we can use this as the basis for public consultation. And further questions were asked at Committee of the Whole about why 30 meters? Why are we picking the 30 meters? Why can't it be 20 or 15? Where's the rationale behind that? And so in my report, I have provided some of the scientific basis for that 30 meters. As well, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, as well as the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, they recommend that 30 meters as a minimum for new development and for areas around lakes and rivers and streams that need to be protected. And I've included in my report some draft language that is being included in the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks new guidance document. They publish this every 5 years in support of the provincial policy statement, which, as we know, was updated this year in 2020. And in their draft language, they not only refer to the 30 meters, but they also identify that they have a possible new process they would like to move forward with on evaluating waterfront lots and dealing with not just the frontage and the 30-meter setback, but also total area. And that would be based on things like what kind of soil is there. So in the future, and in the very near future, it is my understanding that the province is going to be coming forward where the 30 meters is that minimum, and there may be additional requirements on top of that for protecting our waterways. And I've included some of the studies as well as the peer reviews of the science that has been done over the past, not just the 25 years, but most recently, the information that the ministry is basing their new guidance documents off of, the peer review to that specifically. And if any member of council wants to see it, it's public information and I'm happy to share it, or we can maybe put it on the website as we move forward with public consultation so everyone can see that. And bottom line, if the county decides to move forward with a shoreline preservation bylaw, we recommend that 30-meter be the established area. And the bylaw does allow, through its exemptions that are listed, some other development, I don't want to say development, but use of the shoreline. So I did include a percentage-based allowance for people to have access to the water. So if that includes, where their dock is going to go and a pathway down, so they can load their boat at the water, and some other items that could be included. I also updated, as directed, some of the definitions in the bylaw, hopefully to make it more clear. But again, as we move forward with public consultation, there will have to be a more Coles Notes, very concise version of what all of this says, because this is 20 pages of bylaw, and it'd be great to have it in, as directed by Committee of the Whole, one short, sweet document for everybody to easily use. And then, of course, there may be budget implications, which I will bring forward to County Council as part of the draft 2021 budget.
So, Charles, I'm just wondering if your plan is to prepare the Coles Notes so that when we've adopted or accepted a communications process, the two documents will go together, or the Coles Notes will form part of what we're presenting. Yes?
So yes, my thought is that there would be not just the Coles Notes, but also the other schedules that I identify here, based on the answers that I received from, like I said, the ministry and the Conservation Authority. It would all be put into, so it might be 5 documents together to go out as part of that consultation. Yes.
Okay. Unless there's any questions at this point, what I would propose is that we go through the 30 or the list of outstanding items, get a clear yes or no from council on whether they, which way they want to go with those outstanding items, and then go back to the red line if there's anything left that's outstanding that hasn't been answered in Charles's outstanding points. We would deal with that then, unless somebody would prefer to do it in a different fashion. Councillor Moffat and then Charlesy.
I find it difficult to think we're going to go through a list of 30 items from the last meeting without it being, I'm a paper person, and it doesn't give you a chance to read the reply and give it some thought. And so, and if all the answers aren't here yet, I personally, I mean, there's 8 people sitting on the screen here, but would much rather have the document to review ahead of time to form any follow-up questions or clarifications, rather than just do a verbal. I mean, my internet's so bad today, I can't hear half of what people are saying, and that's
not good.
Yeah, so I'm, if that's what council wants to do, I vote no. I just think that given the situation I have today and the way I process information, I would rather see it all together.
Other thoughts? Councillor DeVolen, then Councillor Kennedy.
I agree. I'd rather consider it all with the responses in hand in its entirety. It might take an amount of time that may require a special meeting and something like that, not in the middle of a very large 601 page agenda today. So I concur. I'd rather see it all, and we may do it if Madam Warden, you would see fit, that it might be a meeting in its own because of the substantial nature of this.
Yeah. Charles, you had your hand up.
I was just going to suggest that, yes, it is not, I do not have answers to all of those items on that list. And I would propose that I would bring it forward once that is complete, and we could address it item by item then. That would be my suggestion as well.
Okay. Councillor Kennedy, then Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I concur with Councillors Moffat and DeVolen. This needs a special meeting all on its own. I was quite prepared to debate or discuss the actual bylaw today, and the 30 items were a separate item. I was thinking that we were trying to eat this elephant a chunk at a time, but perhaps we do need a special meeting. I have a number of questions. I've spent basically all night going through this thing again, line by line by line, trying to keep up with Councillor Moffat and her detailed questions and she said. So I have a number of clarifications, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I'd like, and perhaps I can do that independent of today, forward them to Charlesy, and that will form part of the basis of if we do go to a special meeting that deals with this entirely, like on fish habitat, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, by all means, if you're seeking clarification, yeah, we can all do that and call Charlesy. But if you're seeking change, then it's got to come back to the discussion. And I have no issue whatsoever with having a special meeting. It's hard to take a huge issue like this and documents and notch it into the center of a full council meeting. Other comments? Councillor Roberts.
So if that's the direction that we take and we have a special meeting, were we going to discuss today then still the public consultation process? And there had been discussions about possibly hiring a third party to help facilitate with that, or is that part of today's discussion?
I think what Charlesy said was she was still working on that and that would come back to us.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was just on things to do with the bylaw. So the public consultation is still up in the air.
Charlesy.
So yes, the public consultation I plan to bring back to council. I almost want to call it a schedule of A, B, C, D. This will happen on this date, this date, this date. I need to obviously work out that platform. And what I was thinking with regards to this report is today, if there were any significant concerns or questions with the bylaw as edited and presented to council today, I'm happy to discuss and answer those questions. But I was looking for using this as the basis to move forward with some of those other items. This is kind of let's think of this as the bottom of the platform. I need the bylaw and to know that this is the direction in order to build on top of the remainder. So as per this report, I'm happy to discuss the edited changes. I included both a red line and a clean copy. I hope that that might be of assistance as well in moving through it.
I find a red line document is very helpful. I didn't compare them side by side, but you know, to be able to easily see what's been cut out and what's been added, it works really well. Councillor Kennedy?
Do you have the schedules that were presented last time? Are they still the ones you're planning on bringing forward? Schedule A, Schedule C, permits required, not required. That hasn't changed.
So those are the schedules that I'm proposing. They will look different. And if you have a recommendation on additional schedules, what the schedules will do is help us implement the bylaw. So it's kind of telling people how we do X. So if you're coming in for a permit, those schedules will identify, do you need a permit? If you do, this is how you would go through that process. But I am open if you think there's additional information required. I'm happy to have that discussion.
I have lots of suggestions on that point. There again, it's clarification. Things like, as just a quick example, Madam Mayor, if I may, or Madam Warden, stairs. You're saying stairs are going to require a site plan agreement. Is that 3 stairs or 50 stairs? That's the type of thing that needs clarification. Minor landscaping. There's no real definition that qualifies or quantifies what minor landscaping is. So is that, like I have a number of those that should be dealt with item by item, but that's the type of thing that I think, in the interest of clarification and trying to keep everybody's temper down, that if they're addressed at the start through clear definitions, then it helps with you as well. And it also, I'm actually a proponent of any disturbance within the 30 meters should require a permit, whether it's just a notice that it's a minor and there's a process where it goes minor, that you don't need to do anything more than just notice, and that you may get as a surprise, inspection, but it lets the county know there's activities going on that property, and helps with things like fish habitat. You're saying you can do this, this, and this, and then later on and elsewhere in the document, it says, except if it's adjacent to fish habitat, then you can't prune, you can't do this, you can't do that. Now, adjacent brings up its own, it needs a definition. Adjacent is next to or nearby. So we need definition on what is adjacent. So anyways, these are just examples. I don't want to take up too much time, Madam Warden.
Well, if you're seeking clarification, I don't know. I would suggest maybe that you have a conversation with Charles E. And then if there's still something that you want changed, then it would have to form part of a larger discussion. Councillor Moffat, then Charles E. again.
With all respect, Madam Warden, I don't agree with that at all. I think that this is a big and meaty enough piece of legislation for this entire county that if one member of council has a question, we should all hear the answer, because it could come up later. And I believe that the more work we do at the front end of this, the easier the public process could be, because we know it's going to be contentious anyway. And circling back to Councillor Kennedy's question about the schedules, one of the things that I had suggested, a bit of a blue sky idea, was the very poor example of 12 items or less in the grocery line, that if you're going to do, any of these first 30 things, you just need to register your project and expect a surprise inspection. Secondarily, if you're going to do these projects, you shall get a permit. Charles E. is looking into that. The outcome of what she finds and council's discussion, which tree of life, if this, then that, which way it goes, will affect the schedule. So other than, I had some questions, just a couple of questions based on the red line, but I'm not prepared to support what's before us today until those other pieces are put together as part of the puzzle and I can see the whole picture.
Okay. So what is your desire? Do you want to wait and have all our questions at a special meeting? Do you want to go through the red line, some of the red line questions now? Looking for input. Councillor Rial, then Councillor Burton, then Councillor Moffat.
Well, I agree with Councillor Moffat. I don't think we have all of the information. Like, I deal with 2 or 3 Lake Association people who are not necessarily lobbyists. They really care about their lakes. They're genuinely interested in. And some of the stuff that I have talked to them about with regards to that, they're all in favor of. And what I'm getting feedback on is the amount of bureaucracy, the amount of time it's going to take to get all this stuff done, the costs that are going to be associated with the word permit, and the scope with which that's going to happen. And so I really need to know more information about the total scope of the bylaw, which is the pieces that are missing right now. And I'd like the opportunity to run some of that stuff past the people who are going to be working and living with this stuff when we're finished with it. So I'm not ready to work on this today.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Warden. Much the very, very same. Cease kind of stole my thunder, but I would certainly support having a special meeting and gathering all the info that we certainly can at that meeting.
Okay, Councillor Moffat and then Charles E. again.
I was just going to say the same thing. I'm all for a special meeting, pack your lunch, and I think we should roll up our sleeves and put in a long day on this.
Okay, Charles E.
May I suggest or recommend that if I could have those questions in advance to be discussed at the special meeting, it may help the meeting flow more quickly. I would be able to make those connections between the question and the bylaw, as well as the schedules. So maybe that might be a more helpful way to move forward.
Okay. Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Roberts.
And I think it's also important, we all recognize, but I'm saying this because there's, there's the public out there. This is a tremendous amount of work for Charles E. And she has a full-time job. So we can't expect miracles, and we need to, some of the existing processes and work that her department already has in some way dictates the speed at which this will progress. And we need to just acknowledge and respect that is my only comment.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
That's I concur with that. It is been a huge workload to date, but also just wanted to say in the last 2 weeks since our committee, the whole meeting, I have received so many emails in support of having a shoreline preservation bylaw, like overwhelming. So we're on the right track. I just want to say that I know we've also heard some complaints and we've heard some criticism, and we had to correct some misinformation that's out there, but there are a lot of people watching this process and are a lot of people in support. So when we come out with the bylaw that we're all happy with and go out to public consultation, I think there's going to be a lot of support for this going forward.
I do too. Any other comments? Okay, so you've heard the will of council and have some direction. And all we can ask is that, as soon as you can bring it back to us, the better, but it's got to fit in with your existing workload. Go ahead, Charles E.
And if I may, I will look at my calendar to work with the clerk to see what date would work best for a special meeting. I will work backwards from that. And if it's okay with you, Madam Warden, provide a date to all members of County Council for which they could have questions to me by. And then that should be able to work together.
Okay, that'd be great.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, I'm having a little bit of problem with my internet here. But it's a good thing that we've got Jonathan here looking into stuff for us. Go ahead, Mr. Rutter.
I think Councillor Moffat was trying to say something.
Sorry, you were off the screen there for a minute. So go ahead, Councillor Moffat.
I'm jumping in and out and texting my provider at the same time. I'm just wondering, despite the fact that things are on a bit of a COVID slowdown, everybody seems to be busier than usual and normal. And I wonder, rather than the planner picking a date, if there could be at least 2 or maybe 3 dates in a doodle poll. I know doodle polls are sometimes disastrous, but it's just as disastrous to pick a date and have half the people say, I can't go. So just wondering.
No, I think the pick a date was the date by which she would ask us to submit questions to her. And then, yeah, I would expect a doodle poll as well to determine when our special meeting is, if that sounds all right to everyone. So I think at this point, we will just receive the report for information. Mr. Rutter?
I had added some words there. Did you want me to read those or just leave it at receiving it?
Let's hear what you're proposing.
So be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the September 23rd, 2020 staff report on the shoreline preservation draft bylaw, and that Haliburton County Council directs staff to obtain clarification on the remaining unanswered questions and return with the staff report at a special meeting to be scheduled as soon as that information is available.
Sound all right to everyone? Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Burton. Seconder, Councillor Rail. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. I think we might call for a 10-minute break. So if we could reconvene at 10:30, if that's all right with everyone.
Just reminding everyone that there's a bit of a delay here, so bear with us.
Okay. The next item on the agenda under administrative reports is the correspondence listing and specifically information about the innovative food hub that is being proposed in Prescott Russell. This is quite it's a very, very big project that they've been working on for some time. Aiming at food security, and they're looking for support. They got the unanimous support of the Warden's Caucus last Friday, and they're looking for support from Eastern Ontario counties and municipalities. Mike, did you want to add to that at all?
No, I don't think so, other than I think it is an interesting project, and it really stems from a local food initiative that their economic development department undertook a couple of years ago, where they asked local supermarkets and chains to include a local food counter, and it was so popular that they ran out of processing capabilities, and so this is actually that led to this proposal. So it really is interesting to see what happens when local groups get together and all start pulling in the same direction.
Oh, it's a little distance from us, but you know, I think there's an opportunity for anyone who wishes to be involved in sourcing local food could be involved. So I'm asking whether council is interested in supporting the initiative or just receiving this for information. Thoughts, comments? Councillor Moffat?
Remind me what supporting this would do. I mean, yes, happy to support it, but for
there's no request of financial support. You know, it's just basically saying this is a great idea and we support it. And there is an opportunity if you know, our farmers or agriculturally associated people want to be involved, I'm sure that there is that opportunity. Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, and that was where I was going is at the very least, we can make sure that our local farmer folk know about this and maybe get some juices flowing. You know, we had, I recall being at a meeting at the Bonnyview a number of years ago, there were discussions about farm gate sales and, you know, the angst over eggs and whatnot. And some progress has been made. And maybe someone else moving ahead with something like this can be the impetus for reconnecting on some of those conversations and seeing if people are, if the climate's changed enough or legislation has changed enough that people could work together to move these kinds of things forward.
Well, and I would expect that we could get this information out on our website. That would help people become more informed. So could I have a mover and a seconder to support the initiative? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Roberts, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the correspondence from the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, and that the Haliburton County Council supports the creation of an innovative food hub in Eastern Ontario, and further that a letter of support be forwarded to the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, noting Council's support for this initiative.
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Exploring My Haliburton Highlands publication. I'll just wait till our Director of Tourism comes online.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. So this report is regarding our 2021 printed tourism publication and our proposed partner for the project. As you know, we distributed an RFP in July. The deadline to respond was the end of August. We received 2 potential candidates, 2 proposals. And on September 1st, we reviewed those proposals with 3 staff members. And it resulted in the Highlander receiving the highest score with Parker Pad and Printing as their partner. So we'd like to recommend that we work with them on this project for 2021.
Questions or comments? Councillor Moffat?
Certainly in these times when we're trying to assist in the creation of business, not the removal of business, I can't help but wonder if, given the current climate, does anyone have any reservations about producing a paper guide? A touchy thing? Just a thought.
You want to respond to that, Amanda?
I had a similar thought, but I'm hearing from a number of stakeholders and operators that there's a number of tourists and visitors who are still coming, and they are seeking those maps because they're doing more sort of self-guided things in our community than ever before. So yes, I did have the same thought as you, Councillor Moffat, but in hearing how the summer has gone, I think that it's important that we have it in market.
Any other questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder to support the recommendation? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council direct staff to enter into an agreement with the Highlander with printing services from Parker Pad and Printing for the creation and sales of the 2021 Explore My Haliburton Highlands tourism publication. This project will be at no cost to the County of Haliburton.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, the next item is a Rail Trail Roundtable meeting notes. Would you like to speak to this, Councillor Moffat? You're on mute. Yeah.
Here we go. Thank you for that. Yes, I was awarded the chair of this committee, but that's fine. So we have had a second meeting. The first meeting notes are a bit thin, admittedly. We were just getting our legs under us. The second meeting that we had, which you'll see coming up, was a more detailed review of the, I believe they're called the guiding principles and the goals that are in the existing master plan. And, you know, we talked about, are these goals and principles relevant? You know, is there still work to be done? Have they been achieved? So there's still lots yet to review and discuss, including at some point when the group feels it's ready to invite the work of the Friends of the Rail Trail report into that. I don't know, we're not sure where that is in terms of completion. So I don't know when we'll have something for council to review, but it's a worthy review, and a lot of things are still relevant in terms of philosophy, but a lot of things have changed. And so we're going to update that, and you'll see that coming forward. I don't know, Madam Warden, what are your thoughts on timing on that? Like, do you have any idea? Like, would you say we'd be ready in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? I think we said we're not in a big rush to get it done. So,
I would just hope that throughout I think based on the discussions that we've had so far, that there will be some healthy discussions going forward, about some of these, some of aspects of the plan. That I would just hope that we could complete our discussions and have something by springtime.
Mm-hmm.
That would work for me, unless anybody else has got any thoughts about what their expectations are. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Only that since this has been out in the public purview and people are watching and listening to what we're doing and interested in the rail trail, I appreciate the Friends of the Rail Trail and their group, but they're not the only people that have a voice. So we haven't discussed yet how we will incorporate other people who are interested in the rail trail, who use it on a regular basis. Because the Friends are only one group and not necessarily, if someone isn't a member of the Friends, then so that's something that's just, I've been contemplating in my mind of how it hasn't been discussed yet. So I'd like to see that discussed at some point so that we make sure that we do hear from other people.
Oh, absolutely. It would have been my intention that we would hear from any and all associated or interested groups and parties in whatever way. We haven't really talked at any great length about communications yet. That would work. So,
okay, thank you.
Thoughts on that, Councillor Moffat?
No, I agree. And the only reason I mentioned the study by the Friends of the Rail Trail is because it was presented to us. Council supported it and had agreed to consider it at some time, but that doesn't mean that other groups wouldn't be. We did agree that, as you see in the notes, that one of the questions that we asked ourselves included, do we recreate a committee and different things like that. And so we're still mulling all of that over. I think we landed on no at the beginning, but we also did ask how much community engagement should be involved. So that's all yet to come. So stay tuned.
Just another comment. One of the things that we mentioned and need to flesh out a little bit more was the economic value of various users. We did, when we talked some number of years ago about the use of the trail by the ATV users, they brought us information on the economics of the ATV industry. We haven't heard that information from other groups, and I think that that's something that we do need to consider. I know that Councillor Roberts did speak to the rapidly growing cycling industry and the fact that it's hard to even buy a bicycle right now. That's just one of the things that we might consider going forward. Any other comments about that? So if I could have a mover and a seconder to accept the July meeting notes. Mover and a seconder to accept the July meeting notes. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Kennedy, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the July 23rd, 2020 Rail Trail Roundtable meeting notes.
All in favor? Thank you. Next item is the off-road vehicles bylaw and the additional vehicles that we're adding. Is Craig going to speak to that, or okay, we'll just wait for a minute for him to come in.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Good morning, Council. Short report. So the province earlier this summer allowed 2 new off-road vehicles to be allowed on our municipal roads. And so Committee of the Whole, a couple of weeks ago, I brought a report forward, sort of outlining the pros and cons of the various vehicles and asking for direction, whether we would recommend them on our roads. It was recommended that they be allowed. And this report is simply to let you know that there is a bylaw later in the agenda for recommendation. Any questions?
Any questions? So if I could have a mover and a seconder to accept Craig's report. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the September 23rd, 2020 staff report, off-road vehicles bylaw, and that staff be directed to present the draft bylaw for Council's consideration.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Okay, next is the Infrastructure Ontario debenture bylaw. We can have our treasurer to speak to that. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Madam Warden and County Councillors. This report is on the bylaw required so that we can have our $3 million debenture issued on October 1st. So in the 2020 budget, we had already approved $3 million for borrowing for capital projects. And so we had the debt payments of $150,000 and interest payments of $38,000 in the 2020 budget. Infrastructure Ontario requires that we associate projects with this debt. So we've associated County Road 1, County Road 4, and County Road 10. And then they also required that we sign a rate agreement. So we received our rate agreement and we've signed it. They've offered us a rate of 1.38% per annum, which is an excellent rate. And then, so to confirm, that would result, if this bylaw is approved, that would result in our $3 million debenture being issued on October 1st with repayments over 10 years. It's a serial loan. It's 1.38% per annum, and we would make monthly payments. So impact on the budget for 2020 would be $50,000 in payments, repayments plus interest of $6,891. And then for the budget in 2021, we would have repayments of $300,000 and interest of $38,810. In total, we'd end up paying over the 10 years, $208,826 in interest.
Are there any questions of Elaine? Hearing none, could we have a mover and a seconder to accept her report? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Moffat. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the September 23rd, 2020 staff report on the Infrastructure Ontario debenture bylaw, and that the Infrastructure Ontario debenture bylaw report be approved. And finally, that staff be directed to present a bylaw authorizing the debenture.
All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Thanks, Elaine. Next, we have our Director of IT, Mr. March, who's going to speak to us about some security policy changes and some challenges that his department is experiencing.
Good morning, Madam Warden and County Council. So the first of three reports I brought forward today is some revisions I'm recommending to the IT security policy. And to recall, the IT security policy was brought forward and passed by County Council in January 2020. There's a bit of a delay in rolling it out due to COVID, but as we started rolling out provisions in there during the spring and the summer, there were a couple of questions that came up about some of the provisions in the policy, which led us to kind of rethink their inclusion or realize that there potentially needs some modification of language. So the first one was about the statement on the email not being a secure mode of communication. I softened the language a little bit around there because it didn't take into effect or into account emailing internally, emailing very small bits of PII. It was mainly the initial thought process around it was to prevent staff from or educating staff that maybe emailing large amounts of PII through email wasn't the best idea. So I put in a proposed revision on that item. As well, a question arose about our investigation section, and the investigation section in the policy lays out the process for when and how a investigation of staff can occur in terms of email, data, and so on and so forth. There was nothing in that section about county council. So working with the CAO and the management team, we came up with a proposed outline for that, and we wanted to get council's feedback. Once those revisions were put in, we sent the entire policy to our law firm, who came back with some recommended wording changes, which we've included in the draft policy as well. So unless county council would like for me to go through section by section of the changes, I was just wondering if anybody had any comments, questions, or concerns.
Questions or comments? Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I think the clarification in today's day and age is really important. So thank you for that, Mr. March. We seem to have covered everybody, and just not that any of us are going to get ourselves in a situation where we need investigation. But what if it's what if it's a CAO that this needs to be undertaken for? There doesn't seem to be a way, unless I'm getting blurry-eyed from the yellow highlights. There's no way, if the CAO is perceived to be having some challenges, it doesn't appear that there's a way to follow that up.
I think you would be correct on that.
Well, we are above reproach. Maybe we need to add a section in there, but in terms of process, my inclination would be to say that that should be driven by the head of council. So if council have some concerns, it would likely be a conversation there. That would be there would be direction given to the head of council to speak to the IT director to have that investigated. But sorry, Mike, did you?
Well, I was going to say there is a provision in here that for the investigation of staff, the request could be made of the human resources manager. So that's how it's, or the CAO. So
I think it should come through the head of council if it is an investigation required of the CAO.
Directly to the
IT director, yeah.
Councillor Moffat.
Because I would assume that as this is rolled out, municipalities will have to update their own documents to reflect these changes, and not all the local tiers have an HR person. So I think we're better to over-cover it at the front end and avoid any rewrites at the back end. But thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just a question, Mike. As we approach budget time and I'm reviewing your security policies and all the steps you're taking to make everything more secure, is this an appropriate time that our lower tiers should be looking at providing laptops or computers to councillors? I use my own personal computers, and is there? I know there's concerns about security when we're not using computers that are enhanced or protected by your tools. Is this a time for that discussion to happen?
If I may, then yes, the ideal situation would be for both protection and also IT's ability to support council members. In my opinion, it would be ideal if each councillor had a municipal provided laptop.
Councillor Devolin.
That's a huge conversation on a number of levels, given the fact that the municipality, the county own or provide none of the services related to hardware that I have. During COVID times, all of those assets, including laser printers that are in my house and supplies, whatever, that's not an unsubstantial thing. I'm not saying that I disagree that we shouldn't be having that conversation, but it's a huge chunk of money, and also it's hard to not have personal and work things on a device And the reality is, and the director and I have spoken maybe some years ago, whatever, but I have no interest in any device that somehow things that are not of a business nature in it, that it end up before a court. So I'm willing to have the conversation. Let's look at how much money it is, but there's some other privacy things apart from the security of the county that needs to be balanced against the protection of the organization. So I'm probably somewhat of a contrarian on this, but definitely how much money would it cost for us to do that across the board of all of the hardware that would be necessary to support any of us and all of our councillors.
Well, I agree with you to some extent. I know that plus we're not all in the same circumstance. I think some councils already have laptops provided. I know I personally have purchased for my own purposes. I've got a laptop, I've got an iPad, I've got a desktop, and now I'm going to have another computer too, and keep everything divided. I can see that there's some challenges with that, but we do need to have the discussion. There's no question about it. Councillor Moffat.
I agree exactly with you. And as IT knows, there's been some challenges recently. I'm not the only face on the screen that has switched to Mac. And, IT is very used to dealing with PC. And so if somebody said, here's your not free, but here's your computer and it's PC with Windows gazillion on it.
More challenges. Well, we'll leave that with you, Mr. March, to bring a report back to us and some options that might work for us all. Are there any more questions about this report? Do you need to make amendments to it, Mike, or can we accept it as presented?
Well, we would need to add a section just outlining the process for an investigation of the CAO, which if that's approved, it would be made by the head of council going to the director of IT. So I can fill in all the other blanks. Would the council be happy if I amended the policy as such and then be able to pass it that way, or would you rather it come forward to county council again?
Would you like this to come back to council?
I guess I was going to suggest if we could adopt it with the motion that it's as amended, and then we will do that, but then we will circulate the amended version to members of council to make sure you're comfortable with the wording. But if you can just approve it as amended, we'll incorporate that change and circulate to ensure it meets your expectations.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillor DeVolen. Seconder, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the September 23rd, 2020 report on the proposed IT security policy revisions, and that Haliburton County Council approve the IT security policy as amended.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, server infrastructure updates.
So this report is for some recommended infrastructure upgrades to our physical servers with an eye on a potential second wave and preparing for potentially staff working remotely again. I would like to get ourselves in a better position than we necessarily found ourselves in the spring. As mentioned in the report, if staff move from working on site to working remotely, with how we have to provision applications and data for those staff, it offloads some of the processing from their desktops onto our servers. So what we found in the spring was we had a performance hit that was felt intermittently, both by people working remotely and people still working here on site. So I would like to correct that by upgrading the disk drives in the server that would allow for faster processing, faster read and write, and would result in a performance increase that would negate that effect if we were in a position where we were finding staff working remotely again.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'm thinking that because there are no questions that we're accepting your recommendation. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Moffat. Come on, you guys, more of you have hands. Councillor Roberts, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received for information the September 23rd, 2020 report on server infrastructure upgrades, and that Haliburton County Council approved the purchase of server infrastructure upgrades for a cost of $14,000.
All in favor? Carried. We've known this has been coming for some time, Mike, so we look forward to hearing your reports and comments on the challenges that you're experiencing.
So, yeah, if I may, this report on the IT challenges was requested, as you know, by Council regarding the challenges faced by the IT department since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. As stated in the report, the IT team is spending approximately 15 to 20 hours per week on average, supporting Zoom meetings for County Council, Committee as the whole, Land Division, Committee of Adjustments. And what we're finding is even if staff are in the meeting, everything's running well, it's still hard for help desk staff to fully concentrate on tasks while they're supporting Zoom meetings, because we have to keep an eye on the stream. We have to make sure that there's no issues. We're monitoring internet service at each municipal office just to kind of head off any problems should they arise. So while they're doing that, they're finding it hard to concentrate on the core IT service work, and that's by answering questions that come into the help desk at the same time. Now, as municipalities are starting to look at potentially starting up their other committees of council, their other advisory committees, if there's an expectation that IT will assist with the stream and support of these meetings, then I want to have a conversation about what that's going to mean to the IT department and some options for council to consider to alleviate some of the stresses on our resource. So the four options I presented, the first option would be to pass off all the components of the running of a Zoom meeting to municipal staff, and only providing IT support when an issue arises. So if there's an issue in the meeting, then somebody picks up the phone or emails IT and we assist. So in this option, we wouldn't need any additional resources, but there would definitely be a delay in our ability to respond to problems, especially if somebody has to get in the car and drive out to Highlands East or Dysart or anywhere really except for walking down the hill to the Minion Hills. This obviously, and for after hours meetings, which I understand many of the committees of council are, that's when they take place, there would be no support available. In option number two, we would keep providing the same level of support for council, committee, and Land Division COA meetings, but there would be no support for meetings taking place after hours. In option three, we would provide support for meetings occurring during business hours, and then I proposed a mechanism for charging back to the municipalities if any of their committees of council request IT support for their after hours meetings. And then option four, I should say option 2 and 3 are mainly around budgeting some more overtime for staff to catch up on the work they're missing supporting Zoom meetings. And option 4 is presenting an option to hire another IT staff person in either a full-time permanent or full-time temporary position. This would allow us to support all the meetings occurring during business hours and will help to alleviate some of the resource pressures on IT. I did want to note there would still need to be overtime required in regards to supporting after hours meetings. As you know, the hours of work for the IT technicians is laid out in the collective agreement. So any support after hours would still need OT, and then still have to have a conversation whether or not the county council would want to pass those costs back down to the municipalities. So that's the report, and those are the 4 options that I presented. Anybody have any questions on those
Councillor DeVolen, then Councillor Burton, then Councillor Moffat.
I'm in support of option 4. I don't want to see a downstream migration of IT and technical support move from the county to municipalities. It works quite well. I have my fingers crossed that option 4 will be enough. I think there's some operator, expertise that your staff has helped evolve a bit. But as we migrate back to having committees of council re-engaged, I think that it will be critical for the county IT staff to have more personnel. At this point, how if, say, Minden Hills disproportionately uses that versus another municipality in terms of how we adjust the costing, I'm open to discussion. I think it should be fair and equitable. There's a lot of other things that we do with a specific ratio, but this might be one of the ones that like I say, if Minden Hills, let's say we're an IT hog, we probably should pay more than the percentage that we divvy up a lot of other stuff. But that discussion can be had for another day. And overtime, in my mind, are for things that are more of a temporal nature, things that are longer, medium and into long-term in duration. To me, you should staff up, and it also gives you potentially some protection that if you lost staff or something happened to one, we could do it. So it would just put us in a more prepared frame of mind. And does it come with a cost associated with it? Yes, it does. But I think we need to increase our potential across the region, and county IT is the best place to do it, in my opinion. And if this evolution continues, even if we exercise option 4 in the years to come, the director may be back to us, adding us for the next level to be added. So just huge supporter of bolstering his team in option 4.
I concur with Councillor DeVolen. I think we might look at a contract position for, say, a couple of years. We know that we're going to be continuing like this for some period of time. We're also all talking about live streaming and everything that's associated with that. But we'll hear from Councillor Burton next.
I totally agree. And I was going to, before Brent said it so very well, certainly support option 4. I was looking probably full time temporary position, but we can deal with that down the road. But I was also thinking that maybe I would survey my committees and see if they could or would, with the changing times, maybe try to switch over to 2 business hours, if we could possibly do that.
That would help as well, for sure. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I concur as well. Algonquin Highlands has unfortunately had problems with almost all of its meetings, and most of them, or many of them, are Zoom related. Like they're not necessarily training challenges. I agree that the needs are growing. And similarly to Councillor Burton, I think there is a conversation that needs to be had about committees, for IT staff and like where they're going to meet and when they're going to meet. We do have committees once they get up and running. They meet in the evenings and all the way up at Oxtongue Lake, which is a fabulous part of Algonquin Highlands and the county of Haliburton, but it's pretty far up there. But the question that I do want to ask everybody is it the general intention that committees of council are going to move to live stream? Because we had that conversation at Algonquin Highlands, and we also had it at the library board, where the library board determined that its little sort of advisory working groups were not going to be live streamed. So are we looking for, as a group, are we looking for consistency across the board, or are we just going to do our own thing?
Councillor DeVolen, then Councillor Roberts.
Question through you, Madam Warden, to the CEO clerk. Given that committees of council are extensions of it, and under the Municipal Act covered in the same part of law, they must be open and accessible by definition in that regard, are they not? The library board is, for better or worse, is a different animal than committees of council. Am I correct in stating it that way, Mike?
Through you, Warden, I think generally speaking, yes, you are correct. I would leave it to your clerks to decide. I don't know the extent of distance between some of your advisory committees and council. So I'm not really able to comment on all of them, but from our perspective, it would be my expectation that all of our committees would be streamed because of the openness and transparency rules.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. So I was of the mindset, because I have not had time to talk to a staff at Dysart. We had a Dysart Council meeting yesterday, a full day. So I have not had time to talk to our staff to see if we have the capacity to do more, which I already actually think we are doing quite a bit at Dysart and able to host meetings ourselves. So I'm not leaning to option one, but at this point, I am not prepared to make a full out decision on option 4, which is hiring somebody. I'd like to make sure that, and it's not that I don't totally support the IT staff that do not want to see people not getting paid. But I would lean more towards either option 2 or 3. I'm having a little bit of trouble differentiating between those two. But it's a big leap to hire a person at this point when we don't fully know how long this is going, and I'd like to check with Dysart staff first before I make a decision on that.
Councillor Moffat and then Councillor Royale.
I think it's important as we go through this deliberation that we don't want to play fast and loose with people's private time. So overtime of IT staff is going to go into the evenings, and people may have other commitments. And part of me says that, working with an overtime framework is more financially amenable to me. But on the other hand, I think, who are we to make a decision that says not a whole bunch, but a number of people are, sorry, we've just decided to save money that you're going to work in the evenings. I think that's a bit unfair. So that's just the other side of that is, as employers, where are we with the work-life balance of employees?
Councillor Royale, Councillor Schell, then back to Councillor Roberts.
I think the point that both of the three councillors have made so far is this is not going to be a 2-week or a 3-week stopgap. We're looking at 1, possibly 2 years, and I am just not comfortable with getting our staff to start working all kinds of overtime. Maybe some of it would not even be within their capability to muster, depending on what they do outside of work. So I like definitely choosing 4 on a contract basis until we know more about it, because I know right now, just talking to members of our various advisory committees, we have 5, and if you count the fire, that's 6, and everybody is just chomping at the bit to get back to work and starting to improve both our municipality and the county. So if there's any way, shape, or form we can make 4 move as quickly as possible, at least for a contract person, I would be totally in favor.
Well, I'm hearing at least 4 members of council saying that they would look to option 4 as their preferred choice. Councillor Schell?
I would agree, Madam Warden, that number 4, I don't see any of this online techie stuff going away anytime soon, even after COVID. I think that, I know in Minden Hills, we've talked that once we have the infrastructure in place, we will continue to live stream our meetings, even when we are in person. And, with that, there can come issues. So I am fully supportive of option number 4.
That's the majority of council. Councillor Kennedy, and did you have something that you'd like to, some input, and then Councillor Roberts?
I am in favor of option 4. Unfortunately, the mayor and I haven't had an opportunity to speak to this beforehand, so it's a bit embarrassing that we're at opposite ends of this discussion. I believe that overtime should be minimized where possible. I also like the full-time temporary position, and if possible, be funded through the Safe Restart funding program that the county received funding for. That may be a possibility there, so there's no impact to the lower tiers.
Thank you. We are all individual members of county council, so it's not always absolutely required that we agree with our counterparts. Councillor Roberts.
Absolutely. We don't have to talk about that beforehand. And all my thought was here is not that I want to overwhelm IT staff, but I feel that I wanted to check with Dysart staff first to see if we have the capacity in-house to provide that, because if we do, then, and my suggestion, which it's okay, I'm on my own there, would be in the short term, do overtime and even bring this back a month later to see if our respective municipalities has the staff internally to be able to support meetings going forward. But if I feel like going to option 4 is a leap, I'd like a stopgap and have another month, but that's okay.
Yep, unfortunately, you're completely outnumbered. So you're hearing some direction. I'd like to suggest that maybe you bring back a report taking us in that direction, Mike. Is there anything else that you need at this point, Mr. Rutter?
I guess my question is, you said a report taking us in that direction. I'm not sure.
Well, I guess that, you know, what you're hearing is to proceed with option number 4.
Okay. So,
you know, if you have any other additional information or how you might like to do that as a full-time temporary or contract position, anything like, you know, if there are union implications that we might need to hear, you know, back from you on any of that.
Sure. I guess I can just give some of that now because we have had these discussions. The next step is to approach our bargaining unit. We would be proposing the creation of a 2-year contract position. It's a full-time contract, but 2 years. Our collective agreement includes provisions already about you know, the benefits that those temporary positions receive, all of those things. So we would that's the next step, to start those discussions. Because we have IT technicians already, there's no job evaluation required really, so the rate is set. I do believe, with respect to Councillor Kennedy's comment, that this would be an eligible expense under the Safe Restart program. So I think in some ways that the financial burden is lessened because of that. Yeah, so I guess my sense is we are really ready to begin a recruitment once we've had those conversations with our bargaining unit.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution to that effect? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Schell. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Schell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the September 23rd, 2020 report on IT challenges, and that Haliburton County Council direct staff to implement the creation of a 2-year full-time contract position.
Councillor Roberts, did you wish to have the word is just not coming to me, recorded vote?
I was going to fill it in. No, that's okay. We know the vote. I just would have preferred another month, but that's fine. You can take the vote and I'll vote accordingly.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. March. Next is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and a request for proposal approval. Mr. Rutter, please.
Thank you, Warden. The steering committee met to review a draft RFP on August 18th, 2020. The RFP was amended as directed at that point. The revised document has been reviewed by Councillor Moffat, who is chair of that committee as well. And so I guess the next step is to bring it to County Council, have you approve it, and then our hope would be to put it out into the marketplace. I do have a number of suggested dates. I don't know how the steering committee wants to deal with that now, but did you want me to throw out suggested dates, or do you want me to send it out and then see about members' availability through email?
Thoughts on that? I would check on members' availability through email or a doodle poll. Sound all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, if there's nothing further on that, could I have a mover and a seconder for that resolution? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the September 23rd, 2020 staff report, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan request for proposal approval, that the draft RFP be approved, and finally that staff be directed to release the request for proposal.
All in favor? Thank you. Reports and minutes from external boards and agencies. Is there anything that you'd like to report on the health unit, Councillor Roberts?
No, I did ask those COVID quarterly report be sent ahead just for information, just to look at and see how busy the health unit is, how many calls, how many things that they have had to do. And that was just till June 30th. At our meeting just last week too, they talked about their support in working with group homes and places where there's congregate settings, shelters, childcare, that sort of thing. And they've really risen to the occasion. It's been very, very, very challenging for the health unit during this time. And as well, there's still other health crises going on. I know we're living in a pandemic, but the opioid crisis is worse than ever. So they have a lot going on.
Yeah, I would imagine that would get worse in some ways because of the pandemic. Thank you for that. Any questions? If I could have a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes. Mr. Redder, did you have a comment?
Oh, actually, it works. Normally we go through the entire list, but
I have an individual resolution signed beside that.
You do. So you're right.
Mover and a seconder. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the following: the July 16th, 2020 approved minutes from the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit Board of Health meeting, the Board of Health quarterly report, Ontario Public Health Standards, requirements for programs, services, and accountability, combined Q1, Q2, 2020, and that the Q1, Q2, 2020 Board of Health quarterly report at COVID-19 activities.
All in favor? Carried. Anything to report has point in time met, or is there anything that you'd like to bring to us, Councillor Schell?
Yeah, we actually are still meeting. We met last night, and right now most of the meetings are comprised of information regarding preparing the board for the accreditation process, which is coming up very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
That kind of thing.
With respect to the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, we did have a special meeting on Friday, and there was a number of items on that special agenda. As I had reported to you earlier, one of the three primary areas for us to focus on was long-term care. And the Wardens Caucus have awarded KPMG a contract to study long-term care, where we stand at the present time and where we need to go from this point on. And I believe that there will be a subsequent portion to that work being done. But the Wardens Caucus does have the money in the budget based on the fact that we asked for a one-time infusion of funds earlier on in the year, which is helping that to go forward. We also talked about and unanimously supported the establishment of a community paramedicine rapid response team. The paramedic chiefs have been working on this together and presented us with a proposal on Friday, and it was unanimously supported. And in fact, I believe you all received an email from our paramedic chief saying that we sent 2 people as a response team to Ottawa, along with other members of other paramedic teams in Eastern Ontario. So primarily, these rapid response teams are to assist when there's a serious outbreak in a certain area that can't be handled by local resources. So I haven't heard back about how well that is going or went, but I can definitely see the need for it. Questions about that, Councillor Kennedy?
Yes, I understand it went very well. And I watched a couple of posts by Chief Saka and Chief Nolan that it was well received. I forget the numbers, but it was quite an astounding number of tests were conducted. 4 lanes, maximum was 30-minute wait time. Went extremely well. My only question is this being funded through the special COVID funding for the EMS is receiving and not just general?
I've got to say that I think that there's still some questions up in the air about funding for this. Maybe Mike, you can respond to that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a definite pool of money that they've set aside. We have received confirmation from Ontario Health East that it will be funded. They just don't know at this point when or out of what pot. But they did assure us that there would be funding coming for it.
And one of the hotels even offered up free rooms, which was pretty sweet.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yep.
Councillor DeVolen.
We've lost Councillor Moffat.
Let's give her a couple of minutes to see if she can come back.
Mike is saying that he's just received an alarm that there was a power failure at the Stanhope Airport. So if somehow she's connected to that same outage, she may have lost her power.
So do we follow a process and take a 10-minute break? Or I think it's, oh, there she is. Good. Did your power go out?
Hey, where's that Mr. Black now?
Let's not put too much pressure on Mr. Black.
Yes, the power went out and the generator has now kicked in and everything decided to reconnect. So here I am.
Right on.
Welcome to the country.
Okay, so I think we were finished with the community paramedicine rapid response team, unless you had another question about that, Councillor Moffat.
No, I was going to point out that I don't recall getting an email about any of that, but I think I saw something on social media.
Anyway. I thought it was sent to all of us, but I'll check and forward it to you if your name's not on it. Pardon me?
I said it's over now. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, sorry, Madam Warden, it's not necessarily over because there may be more. It's a surge team, so as more surges happen, they would be going. So again, it's only as our resources permit. If no one had been available, we wouldn't have been able to send anyone. But we did have 2 paramedics and a management staff and an admin support able to go on the weekend. So much thanks to them. They gave up a weekend, but we were able to be part of a very exciting team.
That's good stuff. Okay, on the rest of my report, one of the things that's being investigated by the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is the incorporation of the Eastern Ontario Leadership Council. So it would work under the wing of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, as does EORN. So that's a process, something that's in process, and we'll be hearing more about that. There's a few legal requirements that have to be met and notifications. So we'll hear more about that when it's a done deal. We did talk about our meeting schedule. Sadly, we were supposed to meet in October in person here in Haliburton, and it had really been my hope that we could Showcase Haliburton worked together with the city of Kawartha Lakes to, because they were going to be having their plow match at the same time, that we would be able to somehow work together and, you know, really make it a good event for everyone concerned. Well, obviously that's not going to happen, and I'm disappointed about that. But now, given the workload and the projects that we're working on, the schedule has been revamped a little bit, and we will be meeting in November. So I'll keep you posted about that. And the last item we talked about was with respect to the COVID relief funding. Members of the Warden's Caucus were seeking greater flexibility on how those monies would be spent. I think in the argument that was made that most of the money is being spent on operational types of costs, but there are in fact some capital expenditures that may have to be made going forward. I mean, just as an example, I think one example given was the size and configuration of a council chambers, and that it would not work going forward if you wanted to keep social distancing, which could and will become a problem for us as well. So we're writing to the province seeking greater flexibility on how those monies are spent and some clarification. And that's about it, unless there's any questions. Okay, the next item, we need a resolution supporting the establishment of the rapid response team. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Whereas Haliburton County Council receives for information the September 8th, 2020 EOWC correspondence regarding the Ontario Health East Community Paramedicine COVID-19 Regional Response Team proposal. And whereas the Eastern Ontario Paramedic Services have leveraged key partnerships with other healthcare providers to maximize valuable healthcare staffing resources during the COVID-19 response. And whereas these partnerships have helped address the needs of our communities and reduce the strain on the healthcare system during the pandemic. And whereas the Eastern Ontario Paramedic Chiefs recommend the development of a regional community paramedic rapid response team for surge support that is mobile and scalable in order to address seasonal and outbreak surge response capacity for COVID-19 testing through flexible, reactive, coordinated, and cost-effective response. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council for the Corporation of the County of Haliburton endorse the recommendation from the Eastern Ontario Paramedic Chiefs dated September 8th, 2020 regarding the development of an Eastern Ontario Community Paramedic Rapid Response Team.
All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. All right, next is the Kawartha Lakes Haliburton Joint Social and Housing Services Committee annual report and financial report. Did anyone wish to speak to that, Councillor DeVolen?
Yes, I think the housing initiative, this is an ongoing plan that rolls over, and this is kind of the newest version, and we're actually working on the next one. I think it reaffirms, you know, the demographics of the city and the county, as we well know, the challenges that we have, you know, pre-COVID, and this just kind of pours gas on the fire with all of this stuff, and, you know, the intent with the city and the county jointly together, the type of initiatives that we're going to put forward in the next decade to try to put a dent in this. And I can say, apart from this, on behalf of the county and the city, I also sit on a steering committee that's kind of outside of this, and the Housing Corporation, given COVID and other things, how we're going to deal with it, not only on the municipal or the public purse side, but to develop strategies or things that we can suggest to the provincial or federal governments that would get the private side of the equation more engaged. You know, we're very fortunate that the building community in Haliburton County for the last, you know, 30 plus years has made a wonderful living and lots of jobs for us to do with what I'll call predominantly recreational properties. but it's created a real significant void in more traditional residences, both for ownership and for renting, and to see if we can think outside of the box and some things coming forward that would help along this line. So in the social services and housing financial report is typical reporting, just for your information, and that basically those things, even with COVID, are staying so far, it appears, within the lines. And the added complexity with social services housing was the guaranteed income that was in City of Kawartha Lakes and then withdrawn, and all the adjustments, whatever. It wasn't so sure a year or so ago, with all of that happening, that they would be able to stick handle and manage where they are, and they have, and that I would say is a resounding success given all of these budgets and constraints. And sorry if I've said too much, but just it's enough, and it's about transparency coming back to us, what's happening with us both here and there, that we're not doing very little or nothing, that these are big moves that are happening, and we've rolled our sleeves up, and we're fully engaged in the county, helping out in the city and the county.
Well, thank you for that. I'm really pleased to see the financial report as well, that, all things considered, for them to still be, well within budget is, they're really doing well. Any other comments or questions about these reports? Councillor Rutter? Mr. Rutter.
No. Just the one thing I would add, Warden, is I know a number of you may be getting calls or may get calls as income support programs change, or sort of the realities of fall hit some families or individuals in the community. And there are supports available through City of Kawartha Lakes Human Services Division for things like utility arrears, moving costs, property tax arrears, rent arrears, just to help people avoid homelessness. So if you get those calls, please let myself know or City of Kawartha Lakes staff know. Those supports are available, and I expect there will be more need for those as we get into fall and winter this year, and income supports change potentially quite dramatically. So I just wanted to let you know about that, and those are available.
Thank you for that. A mover and a seconder to accept these reports. Councillor Roberts, Councillor Moffat. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the following correspondence: Building Strong Communities 10-year Housing and Homelessness Plan 2014 to 23, 2019 Annual Report, and the 2020 City of Kawartha Lakes and Haliburton County Social Services and Housing Second Quarter Financial Report.
All in favor? Thank you. I don't believe we've got anything on professional recruitment at this time. Nothing on the land claim. Do we need to keep this item on our agenda going forward? There's been nothing to discuss or report for a long time.
I think the direction that we've received is because it is part of our procedural bylaw. So we are waiting to, we were going to take committee of the whole out for a 1-year trial test drive, and then we were going to review after 1 year. The other thing we had talked about is getting an update, which I've made some attempts, but not successful so far, on the Williams Treaty, and seeing if we could get an update for County Council. And it may be that we slot the Williams Treaty in for the Algonquin land claim, but we don't have enough information at this point to say.
Okay. So it remains. You'll see that the draft minutes from June 10th, August 19th, and September the 9th meetings of the Library Board are here. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt these minutes? No, but he wants to. Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Ryle, thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Ryle. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the draft minutes from the June 10th, August 19th, and September 9th meetings of the Haliburton County Public Library.
All in favor? Carried. My apologies. I should have maybe asked if there were any questions or concerns about those minutes. I'm sure somebody would have said something if there were. Okay, then we are now at the Land Division Activity Report. I don't know if Charles wants to speak to that.
Good morning again, Warden and members of County Council. I have just the update from the September 14th Land Division Committee meeting, and that's Schedule A. Those are the decisions. And Schedule B is a cumulative list of decisions to July 31st, 2020. And as I mentioned before, the next meeting will be November 9th. If there's any questions.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the report? Councillor Roberts. Councillor DeVolen, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that the September 23rd, 2020 staff report on land division activity be received for information by Haliburton County Council.
All in favor? Carried. Anything from the Ontario Good Roads Association?
Not really an update, Warden, just that I just thought a bit of information for County Council that we have our office now open. Our staff have the choice of either working from home or coming into the office. We've spent quite a bit of money on renovations on the office to make it safe environment for our staff. We're busy working on our conference. If there's ever a time, I wish we were back with Roma, it's now. But we are working away. We do have a conference planning committee meeting next week, which I'm on that committee. And we are also, it's interesting, we're working on our next June's meeting. And with me going in as president in February, I have the pleasure of hosting it in Haliburton County. And we're just trying to work out some logistics and how we're going to do that. We're hoping to be able to do it in person, but we're just waiting to see what COVID and what comes out of that. But I am excited about hopefully being able to host it in Haliburton County.
No, we look forward to that. Thank you. I think we need to wait just a moment for Councillor Moffat.
Liz, if I may.
Yes.
I'd just like to maybe just touch quickly on our road school. It's interesting with not being able to meet in person that our numbers are holding their own, if not up a little bit with our registration, with doing things virtually.
Well, it's good to hear.
Which I thought was quite interesting, yeah. Mm.
We're all learning new and innovative ways of doing things. Welcome back. Okay, next item is the ERN update. Councillor DeVolen.
It's a busy time. Obviously, the request for proposals have come in, which I can't speak about, but so now the heavy lifting really begins. I also sit on the Finance and Audit Committee, and we just, in the past few weeks, that we'll be bringing back to the board, we went through our audit for the year and whatever, but fast and furious. Obviously, you're probably seeing in social media and conventional media around the province, the momentum for the GIG project is continuing to grow. And that's really exciting because there's some synergies of doing these things together. And as the appetite picks up, the ability to get provincial and federal funding to move what I think is a decade's worth of work forward in maybe half that time. I could have never dreamed a year ago that we could be here with some likelihood that this would move forward, but it evolves every day. And I haven't heard anybody in any quarter speak out against it, that it's a good idea. And Mike, you can correct me if I'm out of turn, but in terms of a group and an organization that has a proven track record with a plan and we're ready to move fast forward, I think we're singularly positioned of anybody across the country. And am I speaking out of turn there, Mike?
I don't think so.
I don't
So it's really exciting. Before the end of the year, we're going to get to tell you some nuts and bolts about this one so that Councillor Kennedy, those people that keep peppering the daylights out of you, will get to know what is and is not happening and potentially what some of those dates are. I know it's better to know a date, that the uncertainty in the questions, whatever, and even an earlier conversation that we had today about, you know, there's an initiative we're taking with the provincial funding, but what EORN and others do is a big part of fitting into that in terms of where the gaps still are. And rightfully, you asked the question today about the sharing and transparency of information so that those other things can be done in a timely fashion and are the best value for the resources that are spent in some of those other initiatives. And I would say, as a board member, and certainly probably Mike as the co-chair, to make that as seamless and non-siloed as absolutely as possible with both our organization and 3 levels of government that's involved in all of these things.
Councillor Roberts.
Well, maybe you hear more from Councillor Kennedy, but we're all waiting with bated breath. And I really appreciate that you said that. We do need to know dates because we're all getting those questions. And so as you said, the heavy lifting begins reviewing these RFPs, but it is exciting. And we just have to remember that these mega projects, big projects, are very slow in the process, but it is going forward. So I know I was in county last Saturday and, a call dropped here and a call dropped there. And I'm like, oh, can't come soon enough. So thank you for being on the board. Thank you for your work, and to Mike Rudder as well.
I find that there really is such a huge level of enthusiasm, and I know when I'm talking about it, I'm enthusiastic, and we're making some great strides. But then you have to tell them how long it actually takes to do the work, and that's the hard part. It really is hard. It's almost heartbreaking when you say, well, this is happening. However, you're still a couple of years away in some cases. Mr. Rudder.
If I could just give some indication, though, of the amount of work that's involved. I think the evaluation team, the number changes a little bit, but in October and November, I believe we have either 11 or 14 meetings scheduled to evaluate the RFPs. So it is a monumental undertaking to get to a time when we can say, here are some dates.
I really appreciate your comments, Councillor Roberts, about, thanking, both Councillor DeVolen and Mr. Rudder. I know how much time Mike is putting into this, and it's extraordinary. A lot of it is his own time, trying to keep Haliburton front and center and on the map, and we can't appreciate that enough. Councillor Kennedy?
I couldn't leave this without saying something. I am just so proud of both Councillor DeVolen and Mr. Rudder for their efforts. And I know it's a passionate thing of mine. I seem to get a lot of these things, and I always try to push them off onto Brent, but I'm just thrilled when I speak to people, and I too reflect, or you're saying, but it may take a couple of years, but we're on the fast track, and I'm just so reassured after listening to Brent say we're probably right, primarily positioned if in the province, if not within the country. So thank you, gentlemen, for both your passion and commitment.
Councillor DeVolen.
And just Councillor Burton was a predecessor on the board, whatever, and Councillor Moffat and others. The reality is EORN, the creation and the evolution and the projects that we built to get to this stage has been on the support and efforts of a number of you over the years too, and that's not forgotten.
Thanks, Brent.
Okay, the next item is Poverty Reduction Roundtable, and that's back to you, Councillor DeVolen.
We have a meeting on Monday, September the 28th. So the next time we meet on this, I'll report out on that.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the October meeting calendar. Any errors, omissions, additions? So we're good to go there. Okay, well, we're up to closed session. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to go into closed. Councillor Burton. Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council enter into closed session as per section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons: security of the property of the municipality or local board, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees.
All in favor? Carried.
Just a reminder that we have a bit of a lag, so just we'll wait for Mr. March's cue. Is Amanda?
Bylaws. So we'll start to go through them if you can introduce them. And well, I guess if we could have a mover and a seconder for the bylaw to authorize the borrowing. A mover, Lisa and Brent.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that bylaw 4008, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing upon serial debentures in the principal amount of $3 million towards the cost of the project name list, be considered read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Mover and a seconder for the bylaw to authorize an agreement for the supply and placement of culverts. Councillor Roberts, Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 4009, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Weir Great-All Limited for the supply and placement of culverts on County Road 12, be considered read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Bylaw for winter maintenance agreements, services with the Township of Algonquin Highlands. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that bylaw 4010, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement for winter maintenance services with the Township of Algonquin Highlands, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. A winter maintenance agreement with Dysart et al. Mover, Councillor Roberts, and seconder, Councillor DeVolen.
Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that bylaw 4011, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement for winter maintenance services with the municipality of Dysart et al., be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Same agreement with Highlands East. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Burton, Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that bylaw 4012, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement for winter maintenance services with the municipality of Highlands East, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Winter maintenance agreement with Minden Hills. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4013, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement for winter maintenance services with the Township of Minden Hills, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Finally, the bylaw to permit additional off-road vehicles. Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Roberts. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 4014, being a bylaw to permit off-road vehicles on county roads, and repeal bylaw 3709, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. Are there any notice of motions? Hearing none, mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw. Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that bylaw 4015, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the September 23rd, 2020 meeting of Haliburton County Council, be considered read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. And finally, a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Schell. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Schell. Be it resolved that the September 23rd, 2020 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Yep, you too.